Rafi moved through the long marble hall of the city building with quiet steps. In his hands was the same broom he had carried for years. The broom was old, its wooden handle smooth from his grip, and the straw at the end worn out from endless sweeping. Dust rose in soft clouds with every stroke, and papers, wrappers, and dirt slipped into his pen. The hall was filled with people rushing to offices, meetings, and big decisions. Men in suits and women in high heels passed by without a glance. To them, Rafi was only the janitor, the man who kept the floor clean so they could walk without care. Some people ignored him completely, their eyes fixed on their phones. Others whispered and chuckled, pointing at his faded uniform and patched shoes. "He has been sweeping here for years," one clerk muttered. "Can't he do anything else?" "Imagine living like that," another laughed. "Just a broom in his hands, nothing more." Rafi heard their words, but he did not reply. He lowered his head and swept another corner. His silence was not weakness. It was patience. Deep inside, he carried a reason to keep going every single day, his daughter, Amina. When the building emptied at night, Rafi walked home. His home was not in the center of the city with its shining towers and glass windows. He lived at the edge, in a small one-room house with a weak roof and cracked walls. But inside, it was bright with something more valuable than gold. There, Amina waited. Amina was only 12, but her hands were quick with pencils and paper. While other children played with toys, she filled notebooks with sketches. She drew bridges, buildings, gardens, and even designs for machines that she only imagined in her mind. Her lines were neat, and her eyes lit up whenever she showed her father what she made. "Look, Baba," she said one evening, holding up a paper. "I drew a bridge that looks like a bird. Its wings spread wide, carrying people safely across the water." Rafi looked at the sketch. The lines were simple, yet there was beauty in the design. He felt something stir in his heart. "Your pencil is sharper than my broom," he told her softly. "One day, your drawings will change the world." Amina smiled, though she knew her father's life was not easy. She saw the cracks in his hands, the tired lines on his forehead, and the way people sometimes looked down on him. She knew he worked silently so she could dream loudly. The days passed, and the city outside was alive with noise and movement. Cars rushed on roads, children shouted in parks, and trains rattled over the river bridge. That bridge was the pride of the city. Built many years ago, it connected two sides of the busy town. Thousands crossed it every day. People trusted it as if it would last forever. But forever was an illusion. One morning, while sweeping near the mayor's office, Rafi overheard two men talking in worried voices. They were engineers. Their papers were full of drawings and numbers. "The cracks are spreading faster than we expected," one said. "The bridge cannot hold much longer," the other replied. "If it falls, the whole city will be trapped. There will be panic." Rafi paused in his sweeping. His heart beat faster, though he kept his head low. The bridge broken? He thought of the trains, the cars, the families who crossed it daily. Disaster hung like a shadow over the city. The news spread quickly. Newspapers printed bold headlines, "Main bridge in danger." People gathered in groups, whispering fears. Officials promised they were working on a solution, but their eyes showed doubt. Engineers argued, leaders shouted, but the cracks on the bridge grew each day. At home, Rafi tried to hide his worry, but Amina noticed. "What happened, Baba?" she asked, putting down her pencil. Rafi sighed. "The bridge of our city is weak now. People are afraid. The city looks for answers, but no one can agree. Amina's eyes shone with thought. She picked up her notebook, flipped to a blank page, and began sketching. Her pencil danced quickly, shaping arches, supports, and patterns. She did not copy what she saw outside. She drew from her heart, creating a design that was strong, simple, and full of life. When she finished, she turned the page toward her father. "What if the bridge looked like this?" she asked. Rafi leaned closer. The design was clear and clever. It was something even the greatest builders might respect. For a long moment, he was silent. Then he whispered, "Amina, your sketch is not only beautiful. It may be the answer the city needs." He looked at his daughter with pride, but also with fear. He was only a janitor. Who would listen to him? Who would believe his daughter's hand could hold the key to saving the city? Yet as the wind whistled outside and the headlines screamed louder each day, Rafi knew one thing. He could not keep the sketch hidden forever. It might be the light in a city sinking into shadow. The next morning, Rafi carried his broom as always. His steps echoed through the empty city hall before people arrived. Yet inside his pocket, folded with care, was something he had never carried to work before: Amina's sketch. The paper was neatly creased, and though it was only pencil on white sheet, to him it shone brighter than gold. He touched the pocket again and again while sweeping, as if reminding himself it was real. The drawing was not a dream. It was his daughter's gift, and perhaps the city's hope. But hope was not enough. Rafi knew the truth: no one respected the janitor. If he showed the sketch, people would laugh. They would say, "What does a man with a broom know about bridges?" So he swept in silence, while outside the city trembled with fear. The cracks in the great bridge had grown larger. Trains now moved slowly over it, and heavy trucks were stopped completely. People avoided crossing unless it was urgent. The newspapers screamed louder each day, with words like danger, collapse, and disaster. At night, Rafi sat with Amina in their small room. The sketch lay on the table between them. She looked at her father's worried face. "Why don't you show them, Baba?" she asked gently. Rafi shook his head. "They will not listen. They laugh at me for sweeping floors. To them, I am invisible." "But Baba," she said with quiet courage, "the bridge is not invisible. The cracks are real. If no one listens, maybe we should try anyway. Maybe one voice is enough to make them stop and look." Her words stayed in his heart like a candle in the dark. The next day, Rafi walked past the mayor's office while sweeping. A group of officials stood there, their voices sharp with worry. Papers covered the table, drawings filled with lines and numbers, but none of the plans seemed to please them. The mayor himself stood in the middle, shaking his head. "This will take too long," the mayor said. "That plan is too costly. And this one? Impossible to finish before the bridge collapses." Rafi slowed his sweeping. His hand touched the sketch in his pocket. His heart pounded. He thought of Amina's hopeful eyes. For a moment, he almost stepped forward. But the laughter of clerks from the week before echoed in his memory, and his courage slipped away. He lowered his head and moved on. Yet fate has a way of testing the quiet. That evening, as Rafi was leaving the hall, one of the young clerks dropped a pile of papers near the door. Without thinking, Rafi bent down to help. The papers were full of bridge designs and notes. The clerk looked at him, half amused, half annoyed. "Careful, old man," the clerk said with a smirk. "These are things you wouldn't understand. Rafi picked up the last paper slowly, but inside, something shifted. He realized that Amina's design, though simple, was clearer than most of the plans he had just seen. He gave the clerk the papers without a word and walked out, but now he felt stronger. Perhaps his daughter's drawing truly had value. That night, Amina waited for him with 2 new sketches. She had added detail supports shaped like triangles, arches that carried more weight, and patterns that made the bridge both beautiful and strong. She placed them proudly on the table. "See, Baba. I thought of the river's width and the weight of trains. If they build like this, the bridge will not break." Rafi stared at the papers. His daughter's hands had done what teams of experts struggled with. He took a deep breath. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "I will try." The next morning, Rafi walked into the city hall with his broom in one hand and the sketch folded in the other. The officials were again gathered in the meeting room. Their voices filled the hall, sharp and desperate. For the first time in years, Rafi placed his broom aside. He stepped forward, his heart beating louder than the noise of their arguments. "Sir," he said softly, holding out the sketch. His voice trembled. "I think you should see this." The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward him, the janitor. Some frowned, others raised eyebrows. The mayor looked confused. "What is this?" asked one engineer with irritation. "We are busy with serious matters. Go back to your broom." Rafi's hand shook, but he kept the sketch stretched forward. His voice was low, but steady this time. "This is my daughter's design. Please, just look at it once." For a moment, there was only silence, broken by a few muffled chuckles. But the mayor, perhaps out of curiosity, took the paper. He unfolded it slowly and stared. His brows rose higher as his eyes traced the lines. The engineers leaned closer. Their laughter faded. The details in the sketch spoke for themselves: strong supports, clever patterns, and a design simple enough to be built quickly, yet strong enough to last for years. Who drew this?" the mayor asked, surprised. "My daughter," Rafi replied softly. "She is only 12. The room was still. The engineers exchanged uncertain glances. One of them muttered, "It is remarkable. The supports are balanced. The weight would spread evenly. And it can be built with what we already have." Rafi's heart filled with both fear and hope. For the first time, no one was laughing. The janitor with the broom had brought something that none of them could ignore. The sketch lay open on the long table of the meeting hall. Lines of pencil, drawn by a young girl, now faced the sharp eyes of engineers, officials, and the mayor himself. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, as if the walls of the hall were waiting to hear the decision. Rafi stood quietly with his head bowed. His rough hands twisted together. He had never stood in the center of a room like this before. Normally, he was a shadow in the corners, sweeping dust. Now, all eyes were on him. One engineer cleared his throat. "This design is unusual," he said carefully. "It is not from any trained architect." Another leaned closer. "But the support pattern is clever. Look at the angles here. They balance weight better than many of our own sketches." A third frowned. "Still, it comes from a child. Can we really trust the safety of the city on a child's drawing?" The mayor tapped his fingers on the table. His eyes moved slowly across the sketch. He was not a builder, but even he could see the strength in the lines. "Perhaps," he said, "sometimes new eyes see what old ones miss." The engineers murmured among themselves. Some nodded, others shook their heads. The room was divided. Rafi spoke, his voice low but clear. I do not ask you to build only from this. I only ask you to test it. If it is weak, throw it away. But if it is strong, then maybe my daughter has given something to the city. The words hung in the air. Simple words, but they carried weight. For the first time, the janitor's voice had broken through the wall of doubt. The mayor finally nodded. Very well. We will give the design to the technical team for review. If it holds, then we shall use it. If not, we lose nothing. Rafi bowed slightly and stepped back. His hands trembled, but inside, a small flame of hope burned. That evening, when Rafi returned home, Amina was waiting by the door. Her eyes were wide with curiosity. Did you show them, Baba? Rafi smiled softly. Yes. They looked at it. They will test it now. Amina's face lit up. She clapped her hands with joy. Then maybe the bridge will be safe. Rafi touched her head gently. Do not hope too much, my child. They are people of learning. You are still young. They may not accept. But inside, he was proud. Whatever the city decided, his daughter's gift had at least reached the table of power. Days passed. The city's fear grew stronger. Reporters crowded near the bridge, showing pictures of the widening cracks. People refused to cross. Markets on the other side were empty. The whole city seemed to hold its breath. Meanwhile, in a hidden office, engineers worked with Amina's design. They measured, calculated, and compared. At first, some mocked quietly. A child's drawing, they whispered. But as they studied further, their laughter faded. The lines of the sketch were not random. The supports were drawn in perfect balance. The arches could carry heavy weight without breaking. And most surprising of all, the design could be built quickly using the city's current resources. One senior engineer, gray-haired and respected, finally said, "This is not the work of chance. Whoever drew this has a natural gift." When the report reached the mayor, his eyes widened. So it can be done. Yes, the engineer replied firmly. If we follow this plan, the bridge can be repaired before it falls. It is our best chance. The mayor leaned back, silent for a moment. Then he nodded. Prepare the teams. We begin at once. News spread like fire. City approves new bridge plan, the headlines shouted. The strange part was not only the plan, but the source. Whispers ran through the streets, the janitor's daughter had drawn it. Some people laughed at the story, thinking it was only rumor. Others shook their heads in disbelief. But many were curious. Could it be true that a child's hand had given the city hope? Back in his small house, Rafi told Amina the news. Her eyes filled with wonder. They will build it, Baba. They will really use my drawing. Yes, my child, Rafi said, his voice shaking with pride. Your pencil has spoken louder than their machines. Tears came to Amina's eyes, but she wiped them quickly. Then I must draw more carefully from now on. If my lines can help people, I will not waste them. Rafi pulled her close. His heart was full. For years, people had laughed at him, but now, because of his daughter, their laughter was turning into silence. Yet not everyone was pleased. Some engineers, proud of their own learning, felt insulted. Are we to be replaced by a child? One of them muttered. What will the city think of us now? Another nodded bitterly. If this plan fails, the blame will be on us, not on her. Their doubts grew like shadows, and whispers of resistance began to spread. But above their doubts, the sound of hammers soon rang by the river. Workers gathered, steel and wood prepared. The new design was set in motion. And in the heart of the city, a small girl held her pencil tighter, ready to draw again if the world asked for it. Work began on the riverbank early in the morning. The air was filled with the sharp sound of metal striking, hammers clanging, and voices calling instructions. Cranes lifted heavy beams, workers tied ropes, and the skeleton of a new structure slowly rose where the old cracks had grown dangerous. At first, people gathered only to watch. Some came out of fear, others out of curiosity. No one truly believed the bridge could be saved in time. Whispers filled the crowd. "Do you know who made the design?" one woman asked. "They say it came from the janitor's little girl," another replied with a half-smile. "Impossible," a man muttered. "Children draw birds and flowers, not bridges." Yet as the days passed, doubt began to change into wonder. The design was clear, the progress fast. Workers who had struggled before now moved with confidence, following the lines of the young girl's sketch. Rafi watched from a distance each evening after his work in the city hall. He stood quietly by the riverbank, his broom still in hand, while the beams rose one by one. Each time he saw the design take shape, his heart swelled. He thought of Amina at home, sitting by the table with her pencils, dreaming of structures stronger than stone. One evening, as he stood there, a group of men approached. They were engineers from the city hall. Some of them looked uncomfortable, others curious. One of them spoke. "You are the janitor who brought the sketch?" Rafi nodded slowly. "It was my daughter's work." The men exchanged glances. Finally, one of them sighed. "We doubted it. Many of us laughed at the idea. But now, we see it with our own eyes. The design is holding. Your daughter has given something even we could not." Rafi bowed his head humbly. "She is only a child. But her mind is open. She sees the world differently." For the first time, the engineers offered him their hands. They shook his, not as a janitor, but as someone who had carried a gift into the light. At home, Rafi told Amina about the bridge rising with her design. Her eyes shone brighter than stars. "Then it is no longer only on paper," she whispered. "It is real now." "Yes," Rafi said softly. "Real and strong. People are beginning to believe." Amina's small hands clutched her pencils tighter. "Then I will never stop drawing, Baba. If even one sketch can save so many lives, I will make 100 more." But not everyone was ready to celebrate. In the high offices of the city, some officials still frowned. "If the people discover a child solved what our experts could not," one muttered, "what will that do to our respect? They will question us in the future." Another shook his head. "Respect cannot be eaten. Safety is more important. Let the people live, then think of your pride." But pride is heavy, and for some men, heavier than truth. Quiet resistance still lingered. The construction continued for weeks. Each day, more of the bridge took shape. Wide arches rose like wings over the water, their bases planted deep into the riverbank. Workers sang while they worked, encouraged by the strength of the design. Even the most tired among them felt a new energy. People began to call it the Bridge of Hope. Children pointed at it with wide eyes, saying, "That bridge is from a girl like us." Families gathered on the banks each evening, cheering as new pieces were added. Rafi sometimes brought Amina there. She stood beside him, her small hands clutching his arm, watching the structure grow taller and stronger. For her, it was like watching a dream come alive. "Do you see, Baba?" she whispered one evening. "It is like the bird I first drew. The wings are opening now." Rafi nodded, his eyes moist. "Yes, my child. Your bird will carry the city across." But just when hope was at its brightest, another challenge rose. Heavy rains swept the city. The river swelled, roaring under the half-built bridge. Workers struggled to keep their footing. Materials were washed away, and progress slowed. Some began to fear the storm would undo everything. "The water is too strong," one worker cried. "If it takes the supports, we are finished." The engineers gathered in worry. "The design is sound," one said, "but the weather is against us. If we cannot protect the base, all will be lost." Rafi listened quietly, then thought of Amina's sketches. He hurried home and showed her the problem. Without hesitation, she picked up her pencil and began to draw again. This time, she sketched protective barriers, slanted walls to push the water aside, and stone anchors to hold the beams steady. "Tell them to place these," she said firmly. "The water will hit, but it will not destroy." The next day, Rafi brought the sketch to the site. At first, the workers and engineers hesitated. But remembering the strength of her first design, they agreed to try. They built the barriers, anchored the beams, and watched as the rushing river struck. To their relief, the water split around the new defenses, and the structure stood firm. The storm passed, and the bridge remained strong. When the skies cleared, the workers cheered loudly. "The child has saved the bridge again," they shouted. Word spread faster than fire. The whole city now knew the truth: the janitor's daughter had not only drawn the design but had saved the bridge from the storm. And for the first time, when Rafi walked through the city hall with his broom, people did not laugh. They stepped aside, they nodded, and some even whispered with respect. But Rafi only lowered his eyes humbly. He knew the truth: it was never his broom that brought honor. It was his daughter's pencil, guided by a heart that saw the world differently. The storm had passed, but the memory of it stayed in people's hearts. Everyone in the city now understood how close they had come to disaster. And everyone also knew who had saved them: not the officials, not the engineers, but the janitor's little daughter, Amina. News spread beyond the city hall. Small newspapers printed her story. "Child's sketch saves the bridge," the headlines said. Some reporters even came to the edge of the city, where Rafi and Amina lived. They wanted to see the girl who had drawn lines stronger than steel. At first, Rafi was nervous. He never liked standing in front of people. He had always lived in the corners, quiet and unnoticed. But Amina faced the questions with calm eyes. "I only draw what I see in my heart," she told them. "The bridge is for everyone. If my drawing helps, then I am happy." Her words touched the reporters. They had expected a child to boast or smile proudly, but instead they found a girl speaking with pure honesty. Meanwhile, the construction of the bridge neared its final stage. The workers painted the beams, polished the walkways, and fixed the last pieces of stone. Day by day, the bridge rose higher, shining against the blue sky. People began to call it not only the Bridge of Hope, but also Amina's Bridge. This name spread quickly. Children in schools whispered it with pride. "A girl like us saved the city," they told each other. Families pointed at the structure when they walked by the river. "That is Amina's bridge," they said. For Rafi, hearing this name was both joy and pain. He was proud of his daughter, but deep inside, he still felt the sting of years of laughter. He had been the man people ignored, the janitor in the corner. Now they respected him only because of Amina. He did not mind for himself, but he wondered if they truly understood the weight of his silence all these years. Inside the city hall, the mayor finally decided to honor Amina. This bridge will carry her name in the record of the city, he announced. Her drawing saved us all. Let no one forget it. The officials agreed, though some still hid jealousy in their hearts. But the people were louder than pride. Their voices demanded justice. They wanted the world to know about the little girl and her broom-carrying father. An official ceremony was planned. The bridge would be opened with a grand celebration, and Amina would be called to cut the ribbon. When Rafi told his daughter about it, she froze with wide eyes. Me? Stand in front of everyone. Yes, my child, Rafi said softly. They want you there. But Baba, I am not a leader. I am just a girl who draws. Rafi smiled gently. Sometimes the world needs a simple hand to remind it of truth. Leaders may speak loudly, but it is the quiet sketches that build stronger foundations. On the day of the ceremony, the entire city gathered by the river. Flags waved, drums beat, and children held flowers in their hands. The new bridge stood proud, shining under the sun. It looked like a bird spreading its wings, exactly as Amina had once imagined. Rafi and Amina stood near the front, both nervous and overwhelmed. People who had once laughed at Rafi now whispered with respect as he passed. Some even lowered their eyes in shame. The mayor stepped forward to speak, his voice echoing across the riverbank. Today we open not just a bridge of stone and steel, but a bridge of hope. When fear filled our streets, it was the hand of a child that showed us the way. Let us honor Amina, whose sketch gave us strength. The crowd cheered loudly, calling her name again and again. Amina's face turned red, and she held her father's hand tightly. Then, with scissors in her trembling hands, she cut the red ribbon. The bridge opened, and people walked across it, cheering and clapping. Some even sang songs, praising the courage of a girl who had drawn lines that carried the city forward. That evening, when the crowd had gone, Rafi and Amina stood alone on the bridge. The river flowed calmly below, reflecting the lights of the city. Baba, Amina whispered, today they all looked at me. But I think they forgot you. Rafi smiled softly. No, my child. They saw me in you. For years, I carried the broom so you could carry the pencil. If they honor you, then they honor us both. Amina leaned against his side, her small hands wrapped around his arm. And together they watched the water, knowing the bridge would stand long after they were gone. Though the bridge stood tall and strong, not every heart in the city was at peace. Among the engineers and officials, a few still carried bitterness. They had spent years studying, building, and leading projects, but now the people spoke more of a child than of them. She will grow up, and they will expect her to solve everything, one muttered bitterly. Imagine, our names will be forgotten, another added. Only hers will be remembered. Their pride burned quietly, hidden under forced smiles at the ceremony. But pride does not stay quiet for long. In the weeks after the bridge opening, visitors from other cities arrived. They wanted to see the famous structure. Some even asked about the girl behind it. Can we meet Amina? They said. Perhaps she can design for us too. The mayor smiled at the attention, but some officials frowned. To them, the fame was dangerous. At home, Amina returned to her simple life. She still drew at the table every evening, filling her notebooks with sketches of gardens, houses, and machines. She did not care for fame or titles. But the city's eyes were on her now, and that made her nervous. "Baba," she whispered one night, "what if they expect too much from me? I am only 12. Rafi placed his rough hand gently on her shoulder. "You gave them hope once. That does not mean you must carry their weight forever. Your pencil is free, just as your heart is free. Draw because you love it, not because the city demands it." Amina smiled at his words, but deep inside, she worried. She had seen how quickly people turned fear into anger, and she wondered if someday they would turn it against her. Her worry was not far from truth. In the city hall, some jealous voices grew louder. "The janitor and his daughter receive all the praise, while we are forgotten," one official said in anger. Another replied, "We must remind the people who truly keeps the city safe. If we do nothing, we will live under the shadow of a child's sketch forever." Plans of pride began to form in their minds. One afternoon, as Rafi swept the hall, he overheard whispers again. "We will not let them rise too high. The city must respect its leaders, not a janitor's child." Rafi's hands froze on the broom. His heart grew heavy. He knew what pride could do. He had lived a life where pride crushed the poor, where respect was denied to those without titles. Now he feared it might strike his daughter. That evening, he said nothing to Amina. He only watched her draw, her small face full of light as she sketched another design. He prayed silently that no shadow would ever dim her gift. But the shadows were already moving. After the bridge opened, life seemed brighter for the city. People crossed safely, shops flourished, and the riverbanks were filled with children laughing and families walking together. The structure stood as a symbol of hope, a reminder that courage and creativity could overcome fear. Yet in the quiet corners of the city, not everything was peaceful. Among the officials and engineers, whispers of doubt and envy began to grow. Some of them could not accept that a child's sketch had guided the city's salvation. Pride had been bruised, and bruised pride often seeks a way to balance itself. "She is only 12, one engineer said bitterly to his colleague. "And yet people speak of her as if she built the city itself. We studied, we worked years to learn, and now all our efforts are invisible." The colleague frowned. "It is not her fault," he replied quietly. "She helped save lives. That cannot be denied. But, yes, the people will remember her. And perhaps forget us." This thought gnawed at them. Their whispers grew into plans. If the city could celebrate a child, could it also celebrate them? Or would they remain shadows in the story that had unfolded? Meanwhile, at home, Rafi and Amina tried to keep their lives ordinary. Amina drew quietly at her table, filling notebooks with sketches of bridges, buildings, gardens, and even flying machines she imagined. Rafi swept the floors and repaired small things around the house, just as he had always done. The fame of the bridge reached their neighborhood, but Amina did not care for attention. She loved drawing, yes, but not for applause. Her sketches were born from her heart, not for recognition. "Baba," she said one evening, "I do not want to be famous. I just want to draw." Rafi smiled gently, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Then draw, my child. The world may notice, or it may not. What matters is that your heart is free." Yet even with her quiet spirit, attention found her. Journalists asked questions, strangers came to see the bridge, and children in the streets called her the girl who saved the city. At first, it was exciting, even fun. But soon, the constant eyes and voices began to weigh on her. One day, she returned home exhausted. "Baba," she whispered, "I cannot draw tonight. Everyone is looking at me. I feel heavy." Rafi understood. He had lived under the weight of unseen labor for years. No one had looked at him, yet he carried responsibility every day. Now he saw that Amina, even as a child, was carrying something similar, the weight of hope and expectation. "Do not worry, my child," he said softly. "Fame can be heavy, but your heart can remain light. Close your eyes, forget the crowd, and draw for yourself." Amina nodded, but her small shoulders sagged under the invisible load. In the city hall, the whispers of jealousy were growing louder. Some officials plotted ways to redirect attention to themselves. "We cannot let the story of a child overshadow all our work," one said in a meeting. Another agreed. "Perhaps we should insist on modifications to the bridge. Minor changes. Then, when she is not involved, we can take credit for solving problems." The words were quiet, but their meaning was clear. Pride and envy had begun to cast shadows over the celebration. Rafi, though unaware of these plots, sensed the tension in the city. Reports of minor disputes reached him. Some workers questioned decisions, some engineers argued about interpretations of the sketch. Nothing threatened the bridge physically, but the spirit of unity wavered. One evening, Rafi took Amina to the bridge. They stood together, looking at the arches reflected in the calm river. "Baba," she whispered, "some people say I should not be praised so much. They think I am too young." Rafi knelt beside her. "Listen carefully, Amina. Courage does not come from age. Strength does not come from size. You did what was right. Others may be jealous, but that does not change what you have done." Amina looked up at the shining bridge, her eyes reflecting the evening Sunday. "I only drew what I saw in my mind," she said softly. "But now, it seems everyone wants to take it as their own." Rafi nodded. "Then hold it in your heart, my child. Let others talk. You know the truth, and that is what matters. No one can take that from you." That night, Amina returned home to her notebook. She did not draw for the city. She drew for herself, for the joy of creating, for the peace of her own heart. Pencils scratched softly across the paper, forming lines that belonged only to her. Rafi watched quietly, sweeping the small room, thinking of all the years he had worked unseen, unnoticed. He realized that now, his daughter faced the same challenge to remain true while the world watched. And yet, as he looked at her focused face, he felt hope. Perhaps the city could learn, through Amina, that the heart and mind of even a small child could achieve more than pride or titles ever could. Outside, the bridge shone under the moonlight, a reminder that courage and vision could triumph over fear. And inside the small house, a girl drew quietly, carrying the weight of the city in her heart without ever letting it break her spirit. The bridge had stood strong for weeks. Its arches gleamed under the sunlight, carrying cars, buses, and people safely across the river. Children laughed as they ran along its sides, and families strolled hand in hand. The city had been saved, and the danger that had once loomed over it felt like a distant memory. Yet, for Amina, the story was far from over. The attention, the whispers of envy, and the pressure of expectation still lingered. She drew quietly each night, trying to keep her world small, private, and safe. But the city's eyes were everywhere. One morning, a group of journalists arrived at her doorstep. Cameras flashed, questions flew, and reporters wanted interviews. Amina froze. She was just a child. She wanted nothing more than to draw quietly with her pencils. Rafi stepped in front of her, shielding her from the sudden crowd. "Please," he said firmly. "She has done enough. Let her be." Some reporters tried to argue, but Rafi's calm and steady voice carried authority. Slowly, they lowered their cameras and stepped back. Amina's small hands trembled, but she felt the warmth of her father's protection. "Baba," she whispered, "why do they not understand?" "They will," Rafi said softly. "Not today, perhaps. But one day, people will remember that truth cannot be hidden. Courage is louder than voices of envy." Meanwhile, in the city hall, the officials who had been jealous of Amina began to see something they could not ignore: the public's gratitude. Citizens brought flowers to the bridge, children drew pictures of it in school, and families wrote letters praising the courage of a girl who had saved them all. The mayor decided it was time to honor both Amina and her father publicly. A special ceremony was announced, not for titles or politics, but to celebrate the truth. Everyone in the city was invited. On the day of the ceremony, the sun shone brightly. The bridge was decorated with flowers and ribbons. Citizens lined the sidewalks, cheering and smiling. Workers who had built the bridge waved their hands proudly. And in the middle of it all, Rafi held Amina's hand as they approached the podium. The mayor stepped forward. "Today," he said, "we honor not just the bridge, but the courage, vision, and heart that saved our city. This bridge was designed by a 12-year-old girl named Amina, and supported by her father, Rafi, whose humility and patience carried her dreams into reality." The crowd erupted in applause. Amina's cheeks turned red, but she smiled. She looked at her father, who nodded gently. "Baba," she whispered, "they are finally listening." "Yes, my child," Rafi replied. "But remember, it was never for them to listen. It was for the city. And for your heart." The officials who had doubted her now stepped forward, some hesitantly, to congratulate Amina and Rafi. Their pride had been softened by the undeniable truth that a child's sketch had guided an entire city to safety. The public cheered even louder, and the officials could not ignore the joy that filled every corner of the city. For Rafi, the moment was bittersweet. He had spent years being invisible, his work laughed at or ignored. But now, standing on the bridge beside his daughter, he realized something powerful: respect earned through courage and honesty lasts longer than titles or wealth. He bent down slightly and whispered to Amina, "Do you see? They laughed at the broom, but your pencil has taught them a lesson." Amina giggled softly. "Yes, Baba. And they will never forget the lesson, right?" "No," he said, smiling. "They will remember. And even if they forget, we know the truth. That is enough." After the ceremony, the crowd slowly dispersed, leaving the bridge shining quietly in the evening sun. Rafi and Amina walked along its arches hand in hand. The river below reflected the colors of the sky, calm and peaceful. Amina stopped and looked at the water. "Baba," she said, "do you think I can draw other things to help people too?" Rafi smiled and squeezed her hand. "Of course, my child. Your heart sees what others cannot. Draw what you see, and the world will follow your lines." They stood together in silence for a moment, feeling the weight of what had passed and the promise of what was still to come. The bridge was more than stone and steel, it was a symbol of hope, courage, and truth. And it belonged not to fame or pride, but to a little girl and her father, who believed in each other. That night, at home, Amina opened her notebook once more. She drew quietly, her pencil moving freely across the page. Rafi watched, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. The city slept safely under the watch of a bridge built from courage, imagination, and love. And somewhere in the heart of the city, the lesson remained clear: never underestimate a quiet man with a broom, or a small child with a pencil. One day, their courage might just save the world.